This is what Vegas thinks of your NFL team. But the question is, do I agree? What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL video. In this video, breaking down the betting market NFL tiers for 2022, giving you my opinion and reacting to whether or not they are right or they're wrong, and where you can spot some value potentially early this NFL season. Let's go. Let's kick it off with the top tier, the Super Bowl aspirations tier. The Buffalo Bills are considered the favorite to win the Super Bowl this season and the top team in the NFL entering 2022. I can't really debate that. The only thing I will say about betting the Bills to win the Super Bowl as opposed to a team like Tampa Bay, I would rather bet the Bucs. And the reason is, the AFC is a much tougher conference and there's much more competition. There's many more hurdles for the Bills to overcome in the playoffs than a team like Tampa Bay. When you look at the second best NFC team, it's the third place Green Bay Packers. And the Packers do not deserve to be here, in my opinion. I don't see them as a true Super Bowl threat. And the reason is, they do not have a number one wide receiver. How do we even know how well Rodgers and this offense will perform without Davante Adams? And that to me is a major question mark. That's why I would list them a little bit lower here. And potentially I'll be betting against the Packers early in the season. The Kansas City Chiefs are another team that I believe are overrated. Davante Adams gone from Green Bay. Tyreek Hill is gone from Kansas City. How will that affect this offense? How will that affect Mahomes? How will that affect Kelsey? I understand that Mahomes and Reed will figure out a way to score points, but it's not only that their offense is now worse, less explosive, and less dynamic, but the defense isn't good either. At least with the Packers, you have a defense that potential-wise could be the best in football. With Kansas City, at best, you're a fringe top 10 unit on defense. Both of those teams to me are overrated and going off reputation, pretty much. We have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are the hyped team of the offseason, obviously, for good reason. Khalil Mack, JC Jackson, big additions to this football team. They also have an elite quarterback who you can bet on. I agree, the Chargers should be in this conversation. They've gone all in this offseason, and to me, they have a top 5 defense and potentially a top 5 offense. At least they did last year. Justin Herbert's amazing and could be hitting his peak this year. I have no problems with where they list them, and honestly, I might have them higher, but I do also see people betting against the Chargers due to their history. Then we have the Los Angeles Rams, the Super Bowl champs, who might be a tad disrespected here. The Rams are a very good football team still. Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, may I say more. They still have Sean McVay. And Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford have a great chemistry. And I believe that this football team will be as good as anybody in the league on both sides of the football. I don't really understand rating the Super Bowl champs this low entering the new season, as people are still going to be excited about betting on them. So potentially there is reason to say that the Rams' Super Bowl run isn't quite what they will be this year. They're closer to the up and down nature of the football team that we saw last regular season, and that could also be true. Moving to the second tier of teams, these are the teams that the market believe are probably playoff caliber, the next in line tier. The Indianapolis Colts headline the tier, and that is really intriguing to me because it feels like they're very high on the Colts and the opportunity for them to make a run this year as a potential dark horse. Obviously, a lot of respect for Matt Ryan and also Frank Reich here. I don't necessarily disagree. I'm just a little bit surprised with how high the Colts are ranked here. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys, who are always a little bit overrated, it seems. But last year, they were underrated, if you remember, for a good portion of the first half of the season. A lot of people were winning a lot of money betting on the Cowboys, and I'm sure that Vegas doesn't want the same results this season, which is why maybe, possibly, the the Cowboys are listed a little bit higher here. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens, which is just a respect move. Harbaugh, Lamar, the success that they've had, healthy as a football team, totally makes sense that they're here on this tier. The Cincinnati Bengals are perhaps being a little bit underrated and a little bit disrespected as the team that represented the AFC. It's obvious that the market is buying into some sort of regression from this football team, potentially offensively with the explosive plays, potentially teams studying them and taking away some of their tendencies, as well as maybe just saying and calling that they were a bit of a fluke last playoffs. That could also be the case. But I do think that they're a better team than, let's say, the Cowboys and should be higher than them for sure. And I would even argue that they should be in the top tier. I would also say that Baltimore has an argument to belong in the top tier as well. Indianapolis, I would probably stay where they're at. The next team is the Denver Broncos, who it feels like some people will be high on them, some people will be low on them, so you got to be somewhere in the middle, and that's where I believe the market is at with the Denver Broncos. A lot of people will be betting on Russell Wilson because he's Russell Wilson, but I don't see a ton of upside now that Tim Patrick just went down to training camp. This offense, I think, is just being steamed up and overhyped a little bit, in my opinion. I love Javonte Williams, the running game, the offensive line potentially, but the receivers, I just don't feel are the same as they were in Seattle, so I think that caps the upside of Russell Wilson passing the football. Defensively, they're decent, but I don't think they're fantastic, especially post Vic Fangio, and I'm still really skeptical about the coaching. So call me skeptical about the Broncos as a whole, and I'll likely be betting against them early this season. The San Francisco 49ers feel like a team that I'll be betting on early this season due to the lack of understanding of Trey Lance. And although I'm not the biggest Trey Lance fan, I really just, the more that I dive into the 49ers, their offense, their success over the last couple of years, it just feels like with Kyle Shanahan, it doesn't really matter who's at quarterback. He's going to make that guy successful. Jimmy Garoppolo was as big of a problem as this team had anywhere on their roster last year and really held back this team from winning the Super Bowl last season. And I believe if Trey Lance, even if he has some bad plays mixed in, he's going to have some good plays mixed in because that's the type of skill set he offers with the big arm, the cannon he has, and the legs. And I believe that the 49ers will take the league by storm with the potential wrinkles they could add to their offense. So I'll be betting on the Niners and betting against the Broncos early this season. Lastly, the Philadelphia Eagles are in the next in line tier. And I totally get this one. This is banking on a very talented roster that has a below average quarterback, and this makes a lot of sense. I could see the value here because the Eagles, to me, have arguably the strongest roster top to bottom in the NFL when you consider balance, when you consider line of scrimmage, all of that stuff. But again, it's just tough to know what Jalen Hurts is going to be. But I've always kind of been a bit of a Jalen Hurts guy. So if I were to side to either side of the equation, I would probably bet on the Eagles rather than bet against them. Once we move to the next set of tiers, this is where you could potentially make some money on the NFL early in the year because this is really where nobody has a strong stance either way. And if you have some sort of inside information or just gut feeling that you really like this football team, then this might be where you make your moves. When looking at these tiers, you begin with the Cleveland Browns. No idea makes sense. Deshaun Watson is the complete reason why, but we do have a little bit more of an idea since this graph came out about Deshaun Watson. It will at least be 6 games, which means to me that gonna be a lot of people jumping on the Browns to bet on the Browns late in the year. And honestly, I don't really see the offense being this dynamic creature that can't be contained. I mean, really, besides Amari Cooper, I don't see anybody dangerous on this football team that Deshaun Watson's going to be able to just light the world on fire with. I get the running game's good and the defense is pretty good, but there's nothing to be super excited about. I think even with Deshaun, this team is on the B tier of AFC teams. I'm probably going to be waiting to fade the Browns as the season wears on. The Minnesota Vikings are definitely a team that I like early in the year, especially possibly in week 1 versus the Green Bay Packers at home. I think because of the indecisiveness of potentially Aaron Rodgers with his new weapon group, and then with Kirk Cousins, an entirely new offense, a new defense, a lot of new players, it's going to be tough to really judge for a lot of people what the Vikings can be. But I strongly feel that the Vikings are going to be a good football team this year, and Kirk Cousins is going to have a great season, and I think this offense is going to be super explosive. I would expect a huge season from Justin Jefferson. This is certainly a team I'm looking to bet on early in the season. We have the Miami Dolphins, who are a team I'm probably looking to fade, especially early. I think there's going to be a lot of hype for them coming in, but it's rather going to take some time to mesh, or it's just never going to mesh. The Patriots here seem to be the undervalued team in the AFC East, while the Dolphins are maybe the overvalued team in the AFC East. New coach. Tua is not my favorite quarterback in the world. When you look at the difference between the Tennessee Titans last year and the Tennessee Titans this year, and just the general stance on the Tennessee Titans, I'm somebody that's lower on them. But I mean, a lot of people are really low on the Tennessee Titans, including the market, which makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm low on them. I think they'll miss the playoffs. But they were the #1 seed last year, and they dealt with a ton of injuries last year. And I understand that they're missing a couple pieces from the offensive line. AJ Brown's gone. Like, their offense is going to be rough, but that defense could be really awesome. And Mike Vrabel's a winning football coach. I feel like I might be siding with the Titans early in the year. I feel like they might be a little bit more competitive early in the season than people want to think. At least that's how I feel with how they're being disrespected here. Even though I'm not the biggest fan, I got to realize value when I see it. Lastly, in this tier, the Las Vegas Raiders are perhaps the biggest value on the board. I think a lot of people are mispricing the difference between Russell Wilson and Derek Carr, which I think is totally misplaced. The gap between the Broncos and Raiders doesn't make a ton of sense here. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Raiders defensively, especially with the new coaching staff change. And I think most people, if not all, are sleeping on what difference Josh McDaniels can make as a coach. I feel like the Raiders are at least a fringe playoff team, at the max a contender, and I don't think they're being treated or marketed that way. I think the shocking team to see in the question marks tier is the Arizona Cardinals, due to the fact that they have Kyler Murray. And I think this just exactly shows you what the market believes about the Cardinals as a football team and as a franchise. I think they believe it's a mess. They believe this roster's overrated. And maybe they even believe Kyler Murray's a bit overrated as well. Because when you look at this tier, Kyler Murray is the only guy on the bottom 2 tiers with any of these teams that you would regard as potentially an elite quarterback, and somehow the Cardinals still are in this tier. And it's not like their division is as strong as it was last year. They're a team that made the playoffs last season. So this is a team that clearly Vegas is fading for good reason. The New England Patriots are a team that I think could go either way, but I choose to believe that Bill Belichick should never be bet against. On top of that, Mac Jones, I just choose to believe in this guy. I think he's going to take a jump this year. I think they've improved offensively. And I think their defense, with Belichick coaching it, I think it might be a little bit underrated right now. And the same could be said about the Saints. I think the Saints are another team that could be undervalued and will give a lot of teams a tough game. Like, I think I'm going to be betting on the Saints to cover quite a bit this year, just because of how many games I could see them being in, because of how competitive their defense is, and the upside for their offense. Jameis Winston's kind of a wild card, but when he hits good. And you got the Washington Commanders, who are another team that I think potentially underrated. If they sneaked into the playoffs, I wouldn't be that surprised. So they're another team that I feel like nobody's talking about, but I think Washington's more talented than they get credit for. Finishing off the team tiers with the Sweepstakes tier, we've got a team like Carolina, which is a little bit shocking. I feel like with Baker Mayfield there, maybe it's the coaching, but I feel like with more stability at quarterback, they should be a little bit higher. And I think Carolina could be a team, especially that week 1 game versus the Browns. That might be a spot where Carolina comes out firing. We certainly know they have talent, and a healthy Christian McCaffrey will help early in the year. The offensive line's better. Maybe the defense is a little bit worse, but I think their offense and how much better it potentially is makes up for it. So maybe it's the coaching that Vegas is fading here, but I choose to believe in most of the talent to make them at least a competitive football team this year, and not a bottom tier team by any means. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm a little bit surprised they're this low. The only reason is because of how much respect the market typically has for Mike Tomlin. But now that Big Ben is gone, maybe they've faded him a little bit. I'm not going to be choosing to bet on them, but I'm also smart enough to not bet against them either. So I'm kind of in the middle. We got the New York Giants, a football team that I think might be a little bit undervalued because of the explosiveness that their offense could offer and surprise a lot of people. I think the offensive line will give them a chance this year. The scheme will really give them a chance, especially their playmakers, Saquon, Kadarius Toney, and these guys. But I think I'll be betting on the Giants because I actually believe Daniel Jones is not a bottom tier quarterback. The next team is the Chicago Bears, who I feel like out of all of these bottom tier teams is overrated. And it could be because of the wild card that Justin Fields poses. And this might be the respect for the potential that he has. But I don't see them being a very good team, even if Justin Fields is good this year. Like, their offensive line's bad. I don't know about this new coaching staff. I don't know about the receiving corps. There's just a lot of areas on this football team I'm not willing to bet on, even if Justin Fields takes a step forward. The Detroit Lions do feel like a team. Typically, I've been saying a lot of people are overrating them, but the people that are overrating them are the people that are betting. And the people that are betting sense value here for the Detroit Lions, and I do as well. I mean, the Detroit Lions to me are more talented than a bottom tier team. I feel like they're in that competitive tier of maybe they don't make the playoffs, but they're going to be a pain in the butt. And that's what I see with this team, especially with an improved defensive line, an awesome offensive line, plenty of weapons to work with, an improvement there. And Jared Goff's second year in Detroit, he should be decent. So, I mean, the Detroit Lions, I just feel like I'm always betting on them, and it's usually for the worst. But this year could actually be the year where betting on them might pay off. Jacksonville and New York, the Jets and Jags feel like two teams that could easily pay off if you bet on them early in the year or even in the futures department. It feels like if you bet on them, they could pay off. I mean, the Jets are extremely talented on both sides of the football. I really like what they're made of on the defensive and offensive lines. I feel like they've got more weaponry and secondary players than people want to realize. And I think Zach Wilson has a massive upside. On top of that, Jacksonville has another quarterback with a massive upside. And I don't believe in Jacksonville's roster as a whole as much as I do New York's, but I do believe in their coach, Doug Peterson, and I do think their defense is deceptively pretty good. So Jacksonville's a team in that division that I think could win more games than people think, and I think's one willing to bet on because Trevor Lawrence, if he plays to his best, could give them a chance in a lot of games. And then the Jets, I just feel like are going to be hanging in games due to their play at the line of scrimmage. So both of those teams intrigue me, especially early in the year. The bottom three teams in the NFL, which are clear and evident to me, the Seattle Seahawks, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Houston Texans, although I would throw the Chicago Bears in there. I feel like Seattle deserves the respect of Pete Carroll, so that makes sense, but they've got perhaps the worst quarterback in the league for whoever is starting there. Atlanta is just really bad pretty much everywhere, so I won't be betting on them at all, and I was a little bit disappointed in Arthur Smith's success last year. And lastly, Houston does feel like the team out of these group of teams that I think could be underrated. I think Davis Mills could actually be the real deal in terms of at least being a starter in this league that can make things happen. I think they are underrated on the defensive and offensive lines. I feel like the Texans, because of how bad their roster's been in the past, is still being given that negative connotation, but I feel like they are better, more talented as a football roster than they've been, which makes me believe that they're a decent bet. Those are the market-derived NFL tiers. If you enjoyed, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. Let me know where Vegas was right and Vegas was wrong. Also, let me know where I was right and I was wrong. And if you need any advice betting on the NFL this upcoming season, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL betting content. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.